Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres. You can follow me on Instagram at Ask Adam Torres. And if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to Apply. All right, so today I have Lindsay Nevin on the line, and he is founder and CEO over at the Flyway Companies. Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, Lindsay. So we have a lot to talk about. We'll be talking about the Charleston market today. We'll talk about trends. We'll talk about development. I mean, you're the guy over there, so I'm excited to get into your brain and kind of pick it and see what's going on in the market. And just to get us kicked off, I'll start with our signature question that we asked all our guests. So, Lindsay, we at Mission Matters, we amplify stories for business owners, executives, and experts. So that's our mission here. Lindsay, what mission matters to you?
Well, Adam, first of all, thanks for having me. At the Flyway Companies, our mission is specific to creating authentic places. In this day and age of so much bad development, most municipalities struggle to find developers that are willing to invest time and money to create a space that is relevant to its surroundings. Although we are bottom line driven, design and creativity play a major role in our process. Our belief is that we create value by thinking strategically about the needs and history of any given site we develop. Given that all of our projects are either adaptive reuse or urban infill sites, we typically have numerous examples to help inspire us in any given neighborhood. We are in most cases, identifying sites in emerging neighborhoods. This allows us to be a catalyst or the catalyst for positive change in any neighborhood. And in all cases, we do development that is overwhelmingly supported by the community. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if we were actively pursuing a project that the community was not in support of. So through good design, thoughtful tenant selection, we're creating places that will stand the test of time and continue to be relevant throughout multiple cycles.
Man, that's awesome. I love bringing these mission-based entrepreneurs and businesses to our audience. And maybe just to get us started, let's talk a little bit more about the Charleston market, because I'll admit I'm not completely familiar with it. I've been to Charleston once for a wedding. I feel like there's some other people watching that maybe they've been to Charleston once for a wedding. Tell us more about the market.
Yeah, for better or worse, it's number 2 to Las Vegas for weddings at this point. But no, Charleston is a really, really strong Southeastern secondary market. Quality of life is high on the list here. The landscape that we've got with the beaches, the historic downtown Charleston, just access to a lot of outdoor recreation and just general lifestyle components is very attractive for a lot of people. We also have really strong job growth that's driving a lot of the demand here. And those primary sectors are really across the board. But if you look back at when the growth in Charleston really started, there was one major catalyst that was in the mid-1980s, a large hotel mixed-use development on King Street downtown that really kind of launched the hospitality sector and the rebirth of Charleston in a sense. And that has driven the addition of numerous hotels, a really, really strong food and beverage program. And since that time, the manufacturing sector has grown significantly. We landed Boeing about 3 years ago, and Volvo has since followed them. So the manufacturing sector continues to be strong. We've got the Port of Charleston that is the deepest port on the East Coast, driving a lot of industrial traffic in Charleston as well. So that sector continues to grow. And then on the residential side, we've continued to see population growth at about 2% really since the 1980s. We're slated to hit 1 million people by 2030. And so with all those people coming here and the additional uptick in those other sectors, the office and support roles for those particular sectors has continued to grow as well.
Now, I know lot of investors watch this show, and I know, and we'll talk about, a little bit more about the investor side of institutional versus, family and friends type network investing. But in terms of just investors that are watching, maybe from out of state or otherwise, like, what are some of the things that you feel they should be thinking about as they examine the Charleston market, kind of as an outsider, so to speak?
Well, if you take downtown Charleston as an example, one, it's one of the most well-preserved cities in the United States. It can't be replicated, and it's a peninsula, so it's geographically restricted. There's a finite supply on the peninsula, and that really can't be replicated anywhere. So that is always one of the primary draws to getting people to Charleston is the old and historic district within the city. And then just understanding the other sectors that are at play here. Again, the industrial side of what's going on in and around the Charleston area continues to grow at a really steady clip. A lot of that has to do with the manufacturing companies that have moved to town, along with the growth in the port activity.
So thank you for that. I mean, I think that's a great overview, and I think it makes sense if somebody's kind of like their interest gets piqued a little bit more, and they're like, "Huh, what's going on in Charleston other than weddings?" There's a lot, and I appreciate that oversight or that overview. So let's get into the Flyway Companies. So tell us a little bit more about the company and kind of why you founded it.
Sure. Well, we started as a general contracting company and started in 2008. Started at the bottom, and have continued to
2008. Wait a minute. So you started in 2000. Oh man, I didn't know the inception date. So when you say started at the bottom, you mean at the bottom of the market too.
That's exactly right. Yeah. So not as anticipated, but I had the opportunity to go to work for myself in 2008, and so that's exactly where I started. So we started with the general contracting company, and continued to build that arm of our business out. Prior to that, I was working with an urban infill developer, and that was really what sent me on the trajectory that I continue to be on today, as far as the infill related work and the quality of work that we're doing. So after we stabilized the contracting company and the market started to pick up, that was really when the development component began to come into play, as we started making acquisitions at that point. And so the acquisitions started in Charleston, and we have since moved outside of this market to other southeastern secondary cities. But our home base continues to be here in Charleston. And so the core of our business is really rooted in urban infill, adaptive reuse type development work. And the contracting company is basically plays a support role in our business here in Charleston. And beyond that, once we had enough assets stabilized and under management, we decided to bring the management component in-house, along with a small real estate shop. So we have vertically integrated the process, and that allows us to represent ourselves on the front end of any transaction, develop the property, build the property, and either sell or lease the property. So it has enabled us to control that process from top to bottom.
Wow. So and I want to go further into your model and what that looks like, by the way, but I do have to take kind of like a sidebar for a moment. So we're recording this in 2021. You started your business in 2008. So there's a lot of people that are right now having the opportunity to work for themselves also, or things are changing, like the market's changing, other things are changing, industries, people are having to pivot. So if you could just, maybe talk a little bit about like what kind of advice you give to somebody, because one thing I love to bring up, and one of the main reasons when I'm like, wow, 2008 is that, yeah, sure, a lot of people, a lot of businesses didn't fare so well, and you were just starting yours then, but a lot of businesses were also launched because of 2008, right? So a lot of good things happened during that time too. So if you were, talking to some of those entrepreneurs or people out there that are maybe starting over or starting a new business in the height of the pandemic and what we're, going through right now, what kind of advice would you give them?
Sure. Well, it was clear that at some point in time I was going to work for myself. I knew that I was always on that trajectory. It was just a matter of when, not if. And by no means did I see myself starting at the bottom. Prior to '08, I had actually been looking at some much larger development projects that I would have stepped into and out of the company that I was with previously. And as fate would have it, that didn't happen, and I'm glad that it didn't. I don't know that I would be sitting here if it did. And so it ultimately starting at the bottom provided an opportunity. It really provided an opportunity for very organic growth, in that it started with myself and one other person, and we're forced to take our time just due to market conditions. I mean, the real estate market, as we all know, was a disaster, and we started taking on fee-based related contracting work and fee-based related development work, and a lot of that was actual work out type of work, whether it was for a bank or an investor, or someone, companies and investors that were struggling. So we were able to come in, help identify the problems, and help work through their situation to try to get an asset stabilized, or at least to the point of completion, to where if it did need to roll off their books, it was in a position for them to actually be able to sell it. So it's as with anything, it's just the way that you look at the situation and the ability to drill into finding an opportunity and or a need. And at that time, the need really ended up being, our ability to come in and help with that workout process with banks and investors.
Man, that's amazing. What an amazing story. And as you're saying it, I'm thinking to myself, like you said, just started with you and a person. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, I started with me and a person too, and then me and one editor. And once we got our first editor, we're like, oh my gosh, now I don't have to write, edit, produce the content all at once. It was like this huge day for us. And now I look as we've grown, and I'm just like, man, a lot of this, what you used, the word you used was organic growth. And for some organic, like sometimes some of those systems and processes and things that you have to create when you're lean, end up being some of the competitive advantage that, years down the line, you look back and it's like, oh, why do we do things like that? Because we had to. Oh, why does this work? Because it had to work. So I could see that in your process.
Yeah, there was no choice in the matter.
Amazing. So going back to the Flyway company. So thank you again for sharing that. Going back to the Flyway company. So tell us a little bit more about what is kind of like your competitive advantage, or what makes the Flyway companies unique.
Well, the fact that we have vertically integrated ourselves at this point allows us to fully understand the process, whether we participate in that process or in each of those processes in every project, is to be determined on the onset of anything that we do. Some of that is investor driven, some of it's location driven. So there are a number of factors that play into that. But if one of the Flyway companies is not participating in that portion of the project, take property management. We have projects in other cities that we don't manage. We at least have the ability to understand that process, negotiate a proper contract, and make sure that the property management company that we have hired is being properly managed on our side from an asset management perspective. So the ability for us to go into any given type of project, whether it's development, construction, leasing, management, we understand that process from top to bottom. So that most certainly helps give us a competitive advantage just from the onset. Beyond that, the types of projects that we tend to take on are projects that a lot of developers and contractors just don't want to mess with. So we do a ton of historic preservation work. We do a ton of adaptive reuse work. It's all kind of emerging neighborhood, urban infill related work. And on the preservation side, we have done work in state and federal historic tax credits that you have to work with the State Department of Archives and History, and then ultimately the National Park Service to get those types of projects approved. Highly regulated, very cumbersome. And again, a lot of people are just either not cut out for that, don't want to learn the process or understand that process, or would prefer to just find a site, build something new ground up, and not have to deal with the nuances associated with preservation work. So that in and of itself, that formula kind of narrows the market in which we're competing. And then beyond that, the infill related piece is the other component that where we feel like we have the ability to operate in a very competitive manner, just given the amount of that type of work that we've done, whether it is sites that have been previously contaminated. We've got a site in Charleston that was originally built and developed by Standard Oil in 1926, and it was an old refinery site. There's stuff, oil, gas,
exactly what you'd
contaminants,
expect it to look like, right?
all over the place. And so the ability to understand that process and to think through what we may or may not run into in the development of any of these sites is critical to the success of any of these projects. So the ability for us to check as many of the unknown boxes as possible prior to getting into these developments is where we ultimately feel like we've got an edge on a lot of other groups, just from the sheer fact that we've done so much of it.
No, that's great. And so it's true vertical integration, the way you're describing it, because I've heard a lot of different companies use the word, but the way that I'm hearing you said it's true. It is true. And potentially not for every project, right? It depends on what the project needs, but you have the capability.
Exactly. Yeah. In Charleston, Charleston is the only market that we operate the general contracting company in. We have not taken that out of state or the Charleston region. So in the Charleston market, we are typically operating each of the four Flyway entities in all of the projects that we do. Once we get outside of this market, as you said, we tend to have the ability to just weigh in on the third party groups that we're hiring to help us with some of the work to achieve our development goals.
So tell me a little bit more about the real estate acquisition side of the business and kind of what kind of projects you look towards and that you look to develop or acquire.
Sure. Well, again, touching on the historic preservation side and the adaptive reuse side, our projects typically start either with a building or a collection of buildings. So I'll use the Standard Oil building as an example. Again, it was three buildings that were built in 1926 and was Standard Oil's Southeastern regional headquarters here in Charleston. It's in the Upper Peninsula area of Charleston, so still downtown proper, but not in the historic district. This is really the area within the only area within Charleston proper that has the opportunity for any real growth at any proper type of density. And this was an old industrial area of town. And so this is where some open space still remains, but the majority of the properties have some type of contamination with them just based on their past uses. So the site that we bought was about 30,000 square feet of existing space that we went through the state and federal historic tax credit process. We renovated those three buildings and then had an additional 2 acres in which we could expand the development on with new ground up development. And so we were able to build about an additional 100,000 square feet on the remaining space, but using the examples of the past, primarily from a design perspective, to really inform what the buildings were going to look like, how the site was going to lay out, and how each of those buildings were going to interact with one another.
Wow, that's amazing. It's an amazing story. And I'm visualizing it right now. I haven't seen it, of course, but visualizing it, I'm like, oh, this is good. And it's interesting to me that when as you mentioned earlier, that you're going into, things that maybe other companies or developers wouldn't either have the expertise or want to do it. But it seems to me like just what you're describing, it's on the peninsula, it's in that area, like they're not making any more land there, right? Like it just seems like great opportunity overall.
It is. And so, again, the primary focus being emerging neighborhoods, whether it's here or in other markets. We feel confident in going into certain areas of town where we feel like there's good growth trajectory and that there's still some authenticity associated with the bones of some of these old sites, some more than others. But nonetheless, it gives us the ability to really think creatively about what's really right for the site. There's obviously market conditions that are dictating some of that, but our ability to really dig in on the front end, understand the history of the site, understand the correct design protocol, and ultimately the right tenant makeup. So we primarily develop mixed use projects. It's as of late, it has been more heavily focused on office and retail, but there is some residential component built into what we do. And on the office and retail side, we talk a lot about the tenant mix specific to any of these sites, and to make sure that we've got the right allocation and the right groups that are going to come in and ultimately make the project successful. We talk all the time about the people that make our projects successful are the tenants that come in and actually take space from us. So it's our job to dig into the design on the front end, come up with something that we feel like is very site specific and is attractive to the market, is got great design protocols, and is something that will stand the test of time. And we talk about the creation of value on the front end of these projects regularly, and that our philosophy is that we would prefer to spend a little extra time and a little extra money on the front end to get the design right, to have that project stand the test of time, and to really stay relevant through multiple cycles. There's so much bad development that takes place, primarily new greenfield development that you see all over the country. There's no soul, there's no sense of place, and you can go to any of these developments anywhere in the country and really not know where you are. And so, we strive to create places where when you're on this site, you know specifically where you are, and that there's numerous activities or, restaurants, and just a strong mix of uses that we have the ability to allocate to our tenants. So we're effectively amenitizing our sites for the office tenants that are coming into these developments.
Man, Lindsay, you're speaking my language right now. I just came up with the name of your podcast, Design Matters, because I love design, and I love, like you said, like you don't want to be in the city or be in this area, or let's just say this whole area gets redeveloped and you're standing in the middle of it, you're looking around, you don't know where you're at. Like you want to feel like you're in Charleston. You want to feel some life and some emotion from the design that invokes, like, it matters where you're at. So Design Matters, I got it called. We've talked about, the design side of things. We talked about the model overall. We talked about, the geography of the area. One thing that's definitely left for us is the money. All right. So the money side of things, and you and I have had some previous conversations on this, and we both have our opinions. So family and friends network versus institutional. I mean, what are your thoughts?
Yes. So fortunately, I've got great relationships with a lot of people, and have been able to grow our investment side just through a very personal network of a small group of friends and family. There have been a number of one-off connections and or introductions made through our existing investment group, but for the most part, we've got a group that we're able to put projects out to for them to analyze, and for us to raise the equity needed on the front end of any project to be able to go in and take it down and to get it properly financed. The size of the projects that we work on, some of them would meet the institutional threshold, but I have zero interest in raising money through those institutional channels. I effectively feel like I'm going to go to work for someone at that point. Again, we've got a pretty specific niche in what we do, and the ability for us to stay the course with the group that we've got, not have to re-educate and or listen to or take advice for the most part from the institutional guys on the design and how we go about our development process is critical to us. So again, just very fortunate in that we're able to utilize the existing network that we've got to get the vast majority of the work done that we've got on the plate.
No, that's amazing, and how good it must feel to see the projects develop and to see them happen, and for you to look back and to be able to say, that you did it, and you also did it under your own terms, right? So that's also a big deal, and is maintaining control is what I'm hearing from you, and making sure that the projects are coming out to your ethics and to your standards. So I love it. It's a great story. Do you accept, but as a side note, I have to ask, do you accept like outside investors, individuals outside of institutions, just in general, that are interested in the Charleston market?
We do. We don't formally market for that, but from a relationship perspective, we've had numerous one-off introductions made, and assuming that we feel like that person is the right fit for the type of work that we do, and that they fully understand our model. Again, very much bottom line driven, but the design principles associated with what we like to take on as a company and as a general ethos is really the root of what we do. And there has to be good understanding and alignment there for there to be acceptance.
Wonderful. So, Lindsay, I have to ask you, so what's next? So what's next for you? What's next for the Flyway Companies? I mean, tell me a little bit more about what you have planned on the horizon.
Sure. Well, I'll continue to point to the Charleston project. It's called the refinery. Again, this is an additional phase of the Standard Oil site. So this was the original refinery site for Standard Oil in 1926. Hence the name of the development called.
It's amazing.
So this is a true mixed use site from top to bottom. We've got a distillery, a high-end beer collective, a restaurant, a radio station, and a slew of office tenants all built into this one project. And the last piece of this project that we're currently working on is a 1,500 person outdoor amphitheater. And so this is literally built into the project. So there is no outdoor amphitheater or outdoor performing arts venue in the city of Charleston proper. This is what we intend to provide. And this is, we're in a relatively unique position with this piece of the project, in that we just have a lot of flexibility in the programming associated with this particular aspect. So the notion from the onset has always been that we will do low volume and high quality, and that we just want the site to be known for high quality performing art acts, and that ultimately we just want this to become an asset to the city of Charleston, and that there is currently no outdoor venue on the peninsula, and it makes this place something very different with the amenity package that we've got for the office tenants on the ground floor, with the restaurant, the distillery, the beer bar, and now an outdoor performing arts venue. There's really no other place like this in town, and the offering that we will be able to put out into the marketplace once the amphitheater is activated, again, will just be very unique, not only to the Charleston market, but to really most places that I've seen. So that particular piece is very top of mind for me, because we are aiming to launch this and get the amphitheater activated early fall of this year. And so we're very much in the weeds and of this being an entirely new segment of business that we have not yet ventured into. And so we've got a great partner in the process that's going to help us on the production side. But as far as the overall site management and kind of curation of the performing arts piece, we're playing an active role in that. So that's something that everybody here locally, most certainly everybody in our office, is excited about and looking forward to. And we're anxious to get the first act in here come September.
Man, that is so exciting. I'm sitting here thinking about like, man, I can't wait. One day I'm going to go to this amphitheater. I'm going to be in Charleston for one reason or another. I'm going to be in
Right.
Charleston. I'm like, oh, I remember Lindsay and the Flyway Companies built this. This is amazing. I'm be in the amphitheater and drinking a beer in your area at the refine. And what the name, the refinery. I mean, it's like you just have a piece of history there that you took and now brought it to present day to something that can be used. And now the city gets to enjoy it. And it's just, it's all cleaned up, all that good stuff. And it's really just I see it as becoming a real highlight of Charleston. Now everybody's gonna have to update all their programs and all their tour guide books and everything. Why? Because Lindsay's building, right?
That's right.
Oh man, this is awesome. Well, Lindsay, I just have to say thank you for coming on the show today. It's great to have you on and to bring you to my audience and to bring the Flyway Companies and all the great work that you're doing for the city of Charleston and the surrounding areas with your other builds and things you're doing. If somebody's watching this right now and they want to learn more about the Flyway Companies or to connect, what's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. You can go to our website at www.flywaysc.com. So it's FLYWAYSC.com. Or you can email us at info@flywaysc.com.
Perfect. Well, again, thank you again for coming on the show, Lindsay. And to the audience, as always, thank you for tuning in. Hope you got a lot of value out of this. Hope you had a lot of fun. We had fun making this for you. If you did, don't forget, hit that subscribe button. We definitely, especially if you're a first-time listener or visitor, definitely want you to continue to watch. We have many more mission-based entrepreneurs and businesses coming up for you next. We don't want you to miss a thing. And Lindsay, again, thank you. It's truly been a pleasure.
Thanks, Adam.